Okay,
So
yes. So
Kim,
we don't have any public, so we'll just move right into that topic because Elisa had asked if we could start with that. So I don't know, Kristen, if you are aware or saw the post on Front Porch Forum from Nakia Deese. So she lives in Bristol and she also is the phys ed teacher at Bristol. And she had posted maybe 2 days ago about her son or sons, I can't remember if it was both of them, had been called some racial slurs at school. And so her post was "Dear Parents" was the title. And she just wrote a really poignant message about that experience and how her son didn't want to go to school the next day and how we all need to do better. And that particularly was sort of a call out to families to talk to their kids. So anyway, hey, Erin, thanks for being here.
Hi.
And then there were a series of responses, which were very supportive. And then Nakia wrote another post today, kind of capturing all of those responses that she'd gotten back from people. Just copied them all, like all of the different things people had to say about what happened and their support for her and what frustration that this happened. But Elisa had asked if we could talk about it today, and I was thinking about what sort of response might come from the board. So anyway, I'll stop talking there and just leave it to the group or open it up to the group.
I just want to say that I've been having daily email conversations with Nakia since she wrote the letter. And I gave her the link to come to this meeting tonight. But it wasn't until late yesterday that she got that. So I don't know that she can come. We're going to have a phone conversation over the next couple of days. And I can tell her about what this committee's been doing. Yeah, I feel like it's a timely plea for us to do bigger and better at this. And I just think it's time that we figure out, maybe not through this group perhaps, but somehow we need anti-racism trainings for students in our schools, and we need it now, or as soon as we can get it. I just don't see any other way to make this work, or else us white people are going to keep screwing it up and letting it go over and over and over again because we don't know how to do it ourselves. Yeah, Front Porch Forum has been blowing up with responses, and they're all great responses, but no one knows what to do. We need to figure this out, and I just think that in addition to what this committee is doing, that there's something much bigger that needs to happen. I also did go and download the harassment policy of Mount Abe. And it's fine, it's great, except for I don't see racism as harassment. It's a much bigger thing than just harassment. And I didn't read anything in the document that led me to believe that there was anything really in place to handle racism. So I just say that and say that I hope to talk to Nakia, and I'm really looking for some way with this group or otherwise to gather people together. I think it's a good time to raise that question. How do we teach anti-racism in our schools starting as soon as possible? So that's what I have to say about it.
I have to say, I agree with everything Elisa said. And to get maybe specific, it's frustrating to think that it might have to go to committee and take time and then filter down. And I'm not saying that those are bad things, but I think this is very timely and urgent right now. And what I heard Elisa and these parents all say is basically, I'm not sure what to do or how to do it. And so I'm wondering, could there be training for community members through the schools or not? Training for teachers and training for kids, because I think we white people often are racist and we don't even know it, or we try to pass the buck to somebody of color to teach us, which is not their job. So I don't know. I'm trying to get specific with some things that could be happening rather than just having a global kind of conversation. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I'm totally unaware of what the teachers are doing now. So I'm coming from the ground zero point. They could very well be doing something now. I don't know what it is, if they are. And if they are, it seems like they could use, I want to say more support. And it's not that they're doing anything wrong or anything like that, but more of a whoop at the importance of this teaching. That's all I have to say.
I also think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this is a great opportunity to reach out to the community and invite them to come, first of all, to the film and to start. I think one of the bigger goals of the screening is to engage the community in starting these conversations. And I think that this bringing people, you don't have to have a teen in your family or, as a neighbor to come to the screening to learn about what people can do and how the conversations can start happening. And I think it's important that all of us reach out to the community to ask and invite people to come into the conversation. We're offering this community space and making the effort to provide an opportunity for this to happen. And Bess O'Brien will be there, so there would be an opportunity for questions and answers from somebody that's done a lot of research and a lot of work in this. And so I think the timing is really good. And I think that it's a great opportunity for the community. And I think, again, we as members of this committee need to do our part to reach out to people and say, I'd really love for you to come to this. And I think I saw what you wrote on Front Porch Forum and love to have you engaged in the conversation. And the more community people we can get there, the bigger the conversation is going to be. So
I just want to say I agree with you, Kim, and I think the film is wonderful, but it's not going to do it. There's no parent who has raised a child to call another young child a nigger in elementary school is going to come to the movie no matter what. We have to come up with a long-term strategy for teaching our children how to be anti-racist at school so that they can go home and tell their parents that they've learned something different.
right. And there isn't one sort of magical thing. What I'm saying is that, we should really put some energy into this event as a starting point. And that, supporting people in our community, what does it look like? And it looks like showing up for the conversation, showing up for the start of something, and inviting people to come in to help solve what's it's a systemic crisis. It's huge. And it's the film isn't going to do it, and I don't have any you know, I don't think this is a one and done thing by any means, but I think it's a great start, and I think it's inviting. It's and even if we can get the young people, and hopefully they'll show it during the day at school. I'm hoping that
Yeah.
you know, it might even be something kids could be incentivized somehow, because sometimes you have to do that with teenagers, but incentivize them to go and see the film during a free period or whatever it might be, that that the more people we get talking about it, the bigger the conversation will be, and the more opportunity there will be for additional efforts and initiatives and people to join the conversation. I'd love to invite every single one of the people that wrote on Front Porch Forum in reply to Nakia to come to the film. You know, if people care enough to reach out and have and show their support, showing up as a community is a huge way to show support. So yeah, that's all.
You know, Kim, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that would be a great start. I'm wondering if that has to be the only start. Can't we do more than one thing at a time? Because I think what the film is going to do is start some really deep conversations that need to happen, and start that long process of addressing systemic racism, which is all around us. But I'm not sure we can wait for that whole process, which is so very important. I totally agree with inviting everybody and having it a great starting point. But I'm a little fearful of not doing something in addition to that. And I can't tell you what it is. I almost would like to ask the teachers, because they're the experts, you know, in how to approach the kids. But I really think something in addition to the children who did the racial slurs, I think they're being addressed. But to bring it more more highlighted in teachings in school. And I really do mean, I think parents need support in how to approach all of this with their children. Even I've done a lot of work, but I still would need support. I would still like some guidance on what I could say, how I can bring it up, you know, what terms I might use that really are racist, but I think I'm doing the best thing that I can. I don't know. I just think some guidance from somebody who's been in this, in addition to the beginning of this project that is so important that we're starting, but that's going to be it's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight, that's for sure. And it's really necessary and important. But I'm not sure it's the only approach we should take. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry I was so long-winded. I guess I could have just said the last thing. I'm
No,
not sure.
that's great. I appreciate all of the thoughts. I'm wondering if anybody who hasn't shared yet has anything to add as well.
Krista, I was wondering, I'm sorry I missed the very beginning, but was this at Bristol Elementary?
Yes.
Yes.
What, if anything, has the school done to respond to this?
Yeah, I did reach out to Patrick, and you know, there's a lot of confidentiality around any sort of incident like this that could be categorized as hazing, harassing, or bullying, and there's investigations and all that. So the only thing I asked Patrick, are you aware of this? And is there anything happening? And he said, we are aware of it and we are on it. And so that's about really all he can share. Nakia's post was to the community, and to specifically, it was dear parents. And so she was sort of calling out community and parents to speak directly to their kids. But I wanted to know what was happening within the school, and was this news? Had she, because she also works at the school, had she brought it to the administration? So it's going through that channel, which is how anything like that is addressed initially, is through that channel, and it's an investigation, and so it's very confidential.
I guess I was wondering as well if there's any sort of school-wide, like community inclusive, like sort of training about what's appropriate behavior, any assembly about what is acceptable to say and not say, in addition to talking to these individuals, like, is there any sort of process for the school as a whole to talk about expectations? Or
I would say that that's ongoing conversation. Those are ongoing conversations in our schools all the time around respect for one another, around kindness and appropriate behavior and language, and building responsive, inclusive classrooms. So that's in place in all of our schools, and the degree that to which they are employed, I think, is different from school to school. And I think in Bristol in particular, because they haven't had a consistent leader for more than 1 year at a time for about 5 years now, I think having a really robust responsive classroom model that addresses these racism, but anything that is not conducive to a inclusive classroom, their ability and like fitness to address those issues is probably not as strong as it might be at a school where you've had the same leader in place for a few years. I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just saying that it's like standard operating procedure is to be, and when a particular event happens, I don't know that there's a community-wide response, because it's very delicate when it's particular accusation of one person against to another. So it's a little tricky. Elisa?
Erin, I love your question, because the things that you talked about in your question would be a cornerstone of an anti-racist course that could be required for students to take. I feel like that there's a lot of conversation happening between teachers and staff, but that isn't translating down to the student level, which is what I really feel like it needs to do. And I also wanted to say that Nakia shared with me a copy of the email that she sent Bristol Elementary School. And when I read it, it sounded like she had great thanks for the staff that intervened and handled the situation in the moment. She said that they did really well. And she makes several suggestions similar to the things I'm saying about changes that need to be made at a much deeper level at the same time. So, yeah.
yeah, obviously it's a little beyond the purview of this community, but I feel like this is an opportunity for the schools to put in place in every school, including in the middle and high school, some sort of anti-racism training, which reaches the students and is, talks about the significance of this. I mean, my daughter came home the other day and was like, oh yeah, these boys were talking about Black History Month, and these white boys, and it was like, when is it our month? And like, so the teacher was like, oh, well, every other month is your month. Like, that's the point, right? And so then they were like saying that they couldn't call on girls in April because it was their month, right? So like, even if that's a joke, like it shows a certain like insensitivity to the gravitas of all of this. And like, yes, it is hugely a parent problem, but it's also something that like the schools can at least begin to address. And I, the teachers definitely are aware of this and trying their best, but I think some kind of concerted anti-racist program that is adopted in all of the schools in a systematic way that every kid get at their grade level and then just continues throughout the grades is kind of necessary. And that's something that we could, you know, pass up to the board as a recommendation. And then once it happens, like disseminate to the community, and that then can become a process of communication with the community as well, and like bringing the community in.
Absolutely. And there are some really amazing organizations out there that are doing those kind of trainings now that we could so easily get help from to create a curriculum course to make this happen. I mean,
So,
the training
yeah.
is amazing.
So a couple things I wanted to say. We have a strategic plan that was adopted in 2019, and it got pretty well derailed by the pandemic and the aftermath. But within that is, there are several goals, and one of them is an equity goal, and it says, all MAUSC students will learn in equitable, culturally responsive, and inclusive environments. And within that there was a group of community members, staff, teachers, a couple of board members, students, and community members representing different organizations. They got together around all these strategic goals, but they did start to drill down into these sorts of things. And so a lot of this work has already been sort of laid out. It's just, it hasn't been implemented yet. The other thing I was going to say is that that there are pockets of things happening, and they're really individual teacher driven, or maybe department driven, or maybe school driven to some degree. There is not a system-wide approach. Someone said earlier, there's a lot of different things to be done. Maybe it was you, Deb, that this screening has a lot of potential to bring people together that might not otherwise see themselves in a conversation about anti-racism, but that might see how there are people struggling across a lot of dimensions. And if all folks, that by lifting everybody up, that we can all benefit from that. But that doesn't mean there isn't a place for some of the more direct making of demands of things that people would like to see happen more immediately. That's not the role of this group, but that's not to say that that doesn't have a place. And I think we talked about this even early on when this new configuration of this group got together. And I remember during the pandemic, you know, around the Black Lives Matter flag being raised, there were a lot of students who were really active and interested in and were poised to approach the board with specific demands, and that petered out. I've been waiting for a swelling of those same students to come before the board and make a demand. So there's a place for that level of activism that can be really powerful. And the Essex Westford School District, there were a group of students that came before the board, and the Winooski School District students came before the board, and they made some really, this can't wait, you need to do this now recommendations. That can be really powerful. That's not the role of this committee, but I think there's a place for that. I think that that for a committee of the board, what we're trying to do is move the system. And so for that, I think finding ways to first engage as wide a range of people as possible and get different folks together to talk about what recommendations might look like, and then bring them to the board. It takes longer and they're deeper conversations, but they can affect things on a policy level and on a systems level in a more long-term way. And I think that's also really important. One thing I wanted to say was that, two things that I think we could talk about right now. One is a statement of the board, and I'm going to just drop into the chat a statement we made as a board after the murder of George Floyd. And I found this today because I thought we'd put something out, and I just dropped it in there. There's a note or two at the top that I put in about some other things about a link to the strategic plan, and then when the Black Lives Matter flag was raised. But the statement was made in September of 2020. And, I think it would be perfectly appropriate for this group to think about a recommendation to the board to make another statement. It might look a little different than this, but to remind folks that this is not okay, and that this is not what we support. Give folks a minute to just look at that statement. The other thing that I was going to say that I think we can do in the more immediate term, it could be used with a listen up screening, but I think is powerful either way. I mentioned to folks Thought Exchange survey, this tool that we can use. And I mentioned it again at Community Council at Mount Abe on Friday when I went and was talking to them about the screening. And it could be really powerful to hear what students and to hear what the community would have to say about what they think is needed so everybody feels a sense of belonging, or so whatever the question is we want to ask, but to really get some very tangible in the moment responses from folks who are either students who are not feeling well served, or hearing things in the hall that other students are saying about one another, or teachers who are wanting more, or community members. And that's really powerful information that can be added to these broad conversations, but to be brought to the board to say, look, we heard from 400 people, X number of students, X number of teachers, X number of community members. What are we going to do around these particular issues? How are we going to know we've made any progress a year from now? Anyway, that's getting us more into like the planning of the listen up screening, because I do also think we could use that data to share at the screening to let folks know what we're hearing in our own community. But I think it's a timely thing to ask now. To hear from people in this moment, what do you think you need, and what can we do?
I think those both sound like really good things to follow up with, Krista, and just briefly sort of looking over what was written before from the school board, the statement. It might be good to also make sure that it's, something is included, like now it's 3 years since George Floyd and this statement, and we're still kind of in the same place, it said something about just recognition isn't enough. What are we doing? What else? How are we moving this forward, and not just, giving the namesake and then letting it sit there until another thing like this is happening? It's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same as George Floyd, but these are the issues that lead to that problem.
Yep.
And addressing it early, especially in elementary schools, makes a big difference for kids. And I like the idea of the thought exchange, especially in a time when people are ready and wanting to give information. I haven't really followed the whole front porch piece. I just have heard about it through and Deb some, so that's why I didn't speak earlier. But I think that the passionate piece that people are engaged right now is really good to capture what's really happening with people, and students especially, and figure out what to do with that. But I think those are both really good extra steps that could be taken. Thank you for bringing those.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great idea to do both of them. The statement, I think, would be great to issue and just say, you know, this doesn't have any place here. We're doing,
Mhm.
but I think we do need to have something specific. If there is something specific that the school district as a whole is doing to try to address these things. And if there isn't, then we can say, you know, plans are underway to come up with some, you know, there wasn't a push to do this and this got sort of derailed, but this is definitely front and center of our agenda, and we want to make this a focus going forward of, you know, something that seems reflective of the reality. But I do think that it's great to condemn it, but not enough, and we need to talk about specific things that we're doing. And it's a great springboard to lead into, you know, the advertising for the movie, but to say that we're looking into things that we can do directly in the school to address these kinds of issues.
Well, and I think to Kim's point earlier, you know, what the language, I guess it's my language, but it's what I believe and hope, is that the screening is a way to get people to convene around these issues. And I know we're talking specifically about racism, and that is the most pernicious and harmful. But there are a lot of people in our community who are struggling with other marginalizations as well. And it really is, you know, and I think I mentioned to this group before, for as long as I've been on the board, I've struggled with what would push this conversation forward more as a board member. And I'm hoping that this is it, where we can really, it's a screening, great, but it's also, and I love the exit interview questions, it's also a way to get folks to want to dig in more, because it isn't just the work of our schools. That is the place that's the most visible and the place where our kids spend the most amount of our time, but it's also the holding tank for everything that our society is grappling with, and it's a lot. And so I think my hope is that this is a way to bring more people together in and out of the schools to look at what we can be doing in our schools, but also in our select boards, also in our churches, also in all the places, because that really is, it has to be everywhere. So I think we could say, Erin, with that board statement, one of the things we're hoping to do is host this screening and have it be a way to catalyst for folks to gather together with more momentum.
And maybe, you know, just kind of thinking back to I definitely agree that there is a sense of urgency. And now is the opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say take advantage of it, but, you know, leading up to the screening, you know, is there anything that can be done, you know, reaching out to the schools, or just to sort of like, not to get ahead of the screening, but, you know, sort of the follow up to the screening. You know, here's what we have in place to address this, you know, moving forward. I don't know if there would be that as an opportunity.
Kristen, do you mean like to know if there's anything specific that might happen in the schools that we could refer to before the screening? Or
No, I think more
what?
of a training in the schools.
Mhm.
Because to your point, you know, it's not something that we can just, you know, flip a switch and say, hey, you know, here's something that we need you to do. You know, there are steps to follow, and it wouldn't be something that we could implement immediately, but just kind of putting it out there, because, you know, we've got three weeks before, 2.5, but I don't know if we would be able to start some sort of a conversation. I don't know.
I
I like what you're saying, and I think that, you know, in my big optimistic lens that I look at the world at, often I think about a training that would happen for the schools, the staff, the students, and the community members, that the towns could help support this effort by providing funding for a training or a series of trainings for community members that would all be based in the same, you know, it could even be the same organization. And I'm sure there's organizations that are doing this, you know, not just for schools, because I really look at this and I mean, it's all reactive, right? We've been reacting to hundreds of years of this, but this is work that the district is taking on. And this incident that happened, you know, at a time when there are plans in place to begin efforts to have these conversations. And and I think that if we're going to stay proactive around it, that it's got to be looked at as a continuum of effort, and that we're not just reacting to this incident that happened, you know, last week. This has been important, and I think putting the statement out and saying this has been important to the district for a long time, and the pandemic, you know, obviously changed where we had to put our energies. However, we really have restarted and want to continue with this work. And how do we get, because I think the schools are doing a pretty darn good job. I think it's parents. I think it's community members. And I think that it's parents that are teaching these kids, and you can share all you want with kids at school. And if they go home and they hear something different at home, all the training they're going to have at school, maybe they could suggest something to their parents, but you know, that's really hard work. I think kids are easier in a lot of respects, but it's the parents and it's the long held beliefs that people have that need to be changed. And I think that's a bigger conversation, obviously, than what this committee is about. But as a community engagement committee, engaging the community in this work and in this conversation is what I see as what we need to be doing. And so, you know, I'm hopeful that we can find ways, like you were saying, Kristen, about having trainings in the different towns or at Holly Hall or someplace where, again, the community can encourage one another to come and learn, because there's a lot of learning that we're all doing, and a lot of learning for people that just are way behind the 8 ball. So yeah. But I think this event that we're having in May needs to be really successful. So I don't want to pile too much on for us to take on. And I think that, you know, if we can make May 8th really successful, and the thought exchange might be a way to integrate some of this other work, the statement will help to generate some thinking within the community and understanding that this is the important work of the school and the board. I think that's a great place to start, and that we can continue to build on it as long as we have all our ducks in a row for, you know, filling up the auditorium on the 8th of May.
Thank you, Kim. I just wanted to remind us that I did send a resource, or we as the group I'm in with Elisa and Deb. We've taken some trainings, and the last one was actually about how to raise anti-racist children. And it's a group called the Center for White American, the Study of White American Culture, CISWAC. And I can re-forward, or we could re-forward that information. But we actually got to a point, because Elisa's my mom, for those who might not know, so I keep going back and forth, reached out, you know, to see if we could get a conversation with some of the trainers, and they're very interested. They could, you know, cater or sort of craft something unique to our community. And, you know, we thought that the price they gave was very reasonable. I'm not remembering what it was at this moment, but they had suggested starting with staff training so that those people could do trainings with kids and sort of build that in. But if it became like, an annual event or training that they did, or maybe twice a year or something, they could touch different parts. And they also do community groups. So that's another possibility. We didn't get into that so much because we were focused more on the school, but that there are resources out there, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and we brought them. And I know it's not exactly here, so I don't want to monopolize the time either, but just so if people want to check it out and take a look, be something to maybe suggest again to the school board. But I guess I'm still a little unclear if the school board would actually be able to do anything, or could they suggest the school, bring on trainers like this, given the situation, or being a little, I don't want to say emergent, because then there's always a sort of weight rushing that happens, and then there's the fade back. So it's like
Right.
the long haul, game plan. But anyway, I'll pass.
Yeah, and I know that it was at least a few years ago that there were several trainings at Mount Abe for staff around anti-racism, and actually ran into a friend recently who at the time was on the staff at Mount Abe and attended one. And she was saying that she was in a small group and not all the staff were super psyched to be there. So there's that too, which is, I think it's hard because you have to. So when you make something mandatory and structural and embedded, you also have to find a way to bring people along wherever they're at, and it's tricky. There was something else I was going to say about that. And then the other thing is that in Bristol, I think I might have mentioned that Porter Knight got a grant through the Vermont Community Foundation, I think, but worked with our town manager to have Tabitha Moore, who's a consultant and was a legislator and part of the NAACP in Rutland, and really great trainer. And they made mandatory for all town employees this 5-workshop series. And they opened it up to other folks who were appointed town officials or on committees. And I've been going to them, but, and it's been great, but they're not that well attended. It's hard to see, I don't know. There's so many different ways that this needs to happen. And so it is a long haul.
I've
Yeah,
got,
and sorry, I would just say that, I think it's great to have these community forums and community education, but you do have a problem of a little bit of preaching to the choir, like the people who show
Right.
up are the people who already care and
Right.
already know that it's an issue. And to some degree, you need to really reach the people who have no idea that it's an issue. And so I think
Right.
that some response by the school in a system-wide way is really necessary, and then we need to disseminate that information to the community that it's happening so that people know that we're taking it seriously. So that you do reach everybody. And of course it's not going to fix the problem, because people are going to be more or less receptive to it, but at least it's getting information out there to kids who may not have that information at all in their lives. So
Yeah.
I have two things to say. One is I agree with Kim about the enthusiasm and getting so many people to listen up. It would be probably too much, but it would be great, because I think that first event, the listening up, is where you're going to get the most people there.
Right.
It would be great to have something to say to them about parenting and how to talk to your children. If we could get somebody I don't mean at that time, but I mean have the information to give it to all those people while they're enthusiastic. I know that's a huge thing, so we don't have to talk about that anymore. I mean, I don't have to. I'm a retired teacher, and I can identify with going to workshops that I have 50,000 things I would rather be doing in my room, which points to the fact of hiring somebody who's done this for a long time, like CISWAC, and it just keeps it going and keeps people, they just know what they're doing because that's what they do. They have the experience with it. And I know that involves money, but that's my point. I don't have to. And as far as preaching to the choir, I agree with that as well. However, even the choir might not know how to talk to their kids, even if they have, they think they want to do this and they're on board. They might not know how to say the first words or have the conversation. That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
Well,
Just need a couple of 20-year-olds in your life. You get a really quick education. It's been fascinating, and
yeah,
I'm humbled and just it's been such a gift in our family to have two girls that are involved and remind my husband and I about where we are and how we got here and why things are the way they are. And I think that that's I think I'm so thankful every day that we live in a place where we're not banning books and we're not saying that we can't teach about the history of our country and our districts. And we're talking about things that are at the very opposite end of that. And I think we should reach for the stars as far as that goes. And it doesn't mean that everybody in our community is on the same page as we are, and that it will take some community engagement and understanding to move this needle even a little bit. There will be people that don't really know that are really interested and will jump at this opportunity, and that will move the needle. But as far as the people that are really at the heart of where this issue lies, it's going to be a long, long time and a lot of understanding by our community to change that. And I think community dialogue can do that. Getting together with your neighbors and feeling comfortable enough to have a conversation. You need professional people that have done it before, and I always loved those I forgot what they're called, workshops where you sit with somebody that's completely the opposite and feels completely the opposite as you do about a particular thing, and then you talk about your different points of view, and that by the end of it you come to this understanding that brings you both sort of makes you understand more how we're more alike than we are different, which is what this work really is. So it's bringing people together and getting them out of their corners to talk about things that are important and why they're important, because a lot of people don't even know they're important. That was cheerful.
go ahead, Elisa.
Chris, I know we need to get to talking about the planning for Listen Up. But I just wanted to briefly say, by the way, I really hope board members will attend Listen Up. I really hope they do. But, there's this timing and this urgency part of our conversation. And I have to say that my urgency is gone. It was over a year and a half ago that Deb and I first experienced this directly in person on a Zoom from Mount Abe. And we've been working for a year and a half to try to push something forward, and nothing has moved. The needle has not moved an inch in a year and a half. And so this is just another nudge to the needle. And I feel like now we're having the same conversations we had a year ago. And it's so frustrating. I can't even tell you. But anyway, the other thing is, whatever we try to maybe do as far as trainings for any community school or whatever, we must remember that we should not use a diversity, equity, inclusion business to do the trainings. This is not the way to go. We will not make any progress, and nobody will want to go to the trainings. My original idea almost a year ago now, was that we need anti-racist courses as part of the curriculum for our students in school, and that community members and parents should have access to those courses if they want them. And I think that's the only way to do it. You can't force a community to come, but kids have to go to school. So we've got a captive audience in our children, and we should take advantage of that, and hope that the community will start to trickle in a little bit at a time. So I just wanted to make those both. One last point. I have two hands. One says yes, racism and all of the other measures for equality or access or inclusion could all go together. But really, racism to me now is a whole different topic than all of the other isms that we have. Because what if you're both? What if you have one of these other isms and you're Black? It's twice as hard for you. Racism itself needs to start to be separated out from all those other things and brought to the forefront. And the reason that we hide it in with all those other things is because then that makes it easier for us to talk about it, because we've diluted it. We have to face it as a separate, huge issue. We can no longer let it slip in with all these other things and deal with it that way. It will never, ever change if we do that. And I'm so sure about that. We have to pull it out, and we have to learn how to get comfortable with it. And I wish everyone right here, right now on the screen would be willing to raise their hand and say, I am an anti-racist racist. We are, if we are white, you're a racist, whether you think you are or not. And you can become an anti-racist racist because of the systemic embeddedness of racism in our white culture. We have to admit that we are racist and then do everything we can actively to become anti-racist. And I'll end my speech right there. I'm so sorry.
I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate your frustration. And I wanted to say two things, and I'm going to move us forward. One is that I do think there's a role for a board statement. Actually, I'm going to say three things. One is that I think there's a role for a board statement, and I'm going to take what we put out the last time, try to reword it a little bit, maybe punt it to this group, and then put it through our communication process to see if we can't get it out to the community. I also know that we have the opportunity for quarterly check-ins with our superintendent, and one is coming up. And so I think, to your point, Kristen, we can ask a little more about what plans are underway or have already happened. And so I can come back to this group with whatever information I get on that. The third thing was that, to the frustration point, I really do think there is a role for activism outside of this group. I do think it's really important. I wanted to share the S6 Westford equity policy because it's very It was hugely controversial when it was adopted. The meeting that it was adopted at was very rife with a lot of positional arguments. It was a really brave group of students and community members and board members who advocated strongly for the policy. It goes way beyond what you might see in most school boards. It calls out very specifically a lot of the things you're talking about, but I want to mention that is a really, that did not happen overnight, and it was a huge heavy lift of beyond just a small group of people really standing up for a considerable amount of time to push that to the forefront and make that happen. So I would just say I think there's more that can be done, and it's really hard work. But anyway, it just share that because I think it hits a lot of the things that we're talking about, and it's really big, and it was not easily adopted. So anyway, maybe it's an aspiration for us. But back to our hopeful start is on the screening on the 8th. And also on our agenda is the ownership linkage plan, but that is going to be worked on outside of the committee and then brought back to this group for approval. So we don't have that. So we have about an hour to talk about the event itself. And I wanted to just share a couple of updates. So let me see where I want to start. So we've just started the trickling of getting the word out. Huge thanks to Kim and Erin who put together the text for the materials, and Kim printed off posters, and we're just starting to get things out in the community, and we really need your help with that as well. Personal invites go a really long way. But we're a month out, and so the hope is that we can do maybe 1 or 2 more waves of invitations to folks. And I ran into somebody today who said, oh, she saw an email that I sent to a bunch of people. She saw it on an email she got from Red Cedar School where her son goes, and she saw it on Facebook. So that image that goes with the poster was like sticking in her brain and making it a little bit more present. So I think it's helpful. Repetition and waves of marketing are really helpful. I did, like I mentioned earlier, go to community council on Friday. There weren't that many students there, but I mentioned it to them again. They knew about it, and we talked about what could happen in school, and that's hopefully being planned by the principal to host an in-school screening. But they were especially interested in the idea of doing this thought exchange survey that I mentioned. They were concerned about how it would be moderated, whether it would be something, and I can't remember if we talked about it in this group before, but there was an assembly not long ago at the high school that was trying to address some important topics, and then there was an instant opportunity for students to give feedback after that was live and viewable, and a small group of students took that opportunity to actually share harmful comments that were and not great behavior. And so this group of students at community council were really concerned that the thought exchange idea wouldn't replicate that they wanted this to be a safe place for people to share useful, helpful thoughts about their experience at school and what about their experience is going well and what could be better as far as making them and their peers feel a sense of belonging. So the principal said, yeah, just let me know when you want to send something out and we'll make sure it goes to all students. And we're going to, and I think sending something out to the community as well would be really helpful. And to be able to use themes from that survey to share at the screening to say, you know, this is a screening that mostly takes place with youth outside of our community, but these are the expressions of kids right here who are experiencing a lot of the same things. I think that could be really powerful. And then the last update I have is that I have an email into Bess to ask her a little bit more about the Q&A itself. What exactly might that look like? How can we ensure that it's productive and helpful? Should we have a flyer with resources for folks that we hand out after? Which kind of goes to what you were talking a little bit about, Deb, as far as info for parents. Just asking her what are some examples of screenings that have gone really well, and what made them go well, and what made them not go so well. So those are some of the things that I've been trying to chip away at. I'm also trying to figure out if we can get childcare through the students who work at ELP, the after school program, and talk to Patrick Green about that, and about like the liability around that, and if, you know, how to make that work, so we can let people know that if that's an option, that we can offer childcare during that time. Yeah, I think that's all that I have so far. Anyone else have anything they want to share about it, or things that they think we should be keeping in mind?
Do we have, I noticed on that list, are there people in each town responsible for posting on Front Porch Forum? I didn't see that on that to-do list. So it'd be good if there was, you know, specific individuals who are going to do that for each town. And if, I think we don't have every town represented here, but I think,
Right.
you know, I have a friend, you know, I have a couple friends in Moncton.
That's an easy one that I could probably ask board members to do.
Oh, great.
To post, because we have them post board highlights, so we can ask for folks to post in their towns. We don't have any board members from Lincoln, but we'd love for Lincoln folks to attend as well. So I'm sure we can get somebody to do that for us.
Are board members posting in Bristol? I'm just thinking it might be really powerful to have some community members who are on this committee from Bristol to invite people.
Yep.
Because it then feels more like a community effort than it does a school board effort. And I think that's what we want this to be.
Yeah.
I would just, and if people are uncomfortable or whatever, you know, but it just feels to me like it would be really nice for community folks to invite other community folks.
I think that's a great idea. And it could be both.
I'm happy to do a Front Porch Forum post for Bristol.
Great.
And I have just a couple logistical questions.
Yeah.
So I haven't sent anything out yet because I wanted to get clear tonight about what I was doing.
Yep.
So I was thinking I'd be taking posters to places. Where is there a way we can get? It sounds like the posters are different from the things that you sent that are for us for emailing. I don't know.
And we can do both. And I think depending on where you're talking about, Elisa, and the best way to connect with people there, it might be that maybe both, like an email,
yeah,
and a poster.
I think I could use about 5 posters.
Okay,
And
so I think, Kim, you were hoping to get some for, what's today? Today's Tuesday. When did you think those would be ready, and how many did you
They'll
ask
be ready
for?
tomorrow. So
And how many more did you have printed?
I printed 10 more. Do you want more than that? I could just email them and ask for another 5 or.
Let's see. Where were you thinking, Elisa?
Lincoln Library, CSAC, Chamber of Commerce, Mountain Health, and I thought I'd get a spare in case I thought of some place. Then I had one with me, I could put it up.
Okay, so that's 5. And
I'd
then
like one for the library here in Bristol.
6. There are a couple places in town that I didn't I wonder if how many did you ask for, Kim? 10?
10.
Actually, I'd like 2 for Bristol, one upstairs and one downstairs for the children's,
So we're at
if
like
it's
8.
possible.
So we're at 8 now. Yeah, I'd love to have White Mountain Health.
The Turning Point, I think I saw on the list too. I'd be willing to go there and bring a poster. Middlebury, there's one in Burlington too. I could post here as well.
And you know what I can do is, Kim, if you can deliver them to my house, I'm right in the village, and I can keep them on my front porch in like a little plastic something so that people can just come and grab them,
Yeah, that'd be great.
however many.
Actually, I could go to Lincoln General Store too, so maybe give me 6.
Okay. So I don't know, is 10 enough? We might need 15.
All right, I'll get 5 more.
Kim, I'm at the yoga studio tomorrow morning and Friday morning. If that's an easy place to meet to get posters.
I have to pick them up in Middlebury, so.
Or
and
do you
I
want me?
did-
I'm going to Middlebury tomorrow, so I can pick them up actually.
Okay, you might call because they say they're usually ready by like 2, but they would, if they get to it and they're not too busy, they might have them done before that.
Oh, okay. I'm there in the morning. But I can go. Were you going to go into Middlebury anyway? I don't want you to make a run into there.
No, I have to be there in the morning, but I was
Yeah,
gonna
me
go
too.
back to.
Yeah,
get
like-
them. Yeah. But that's
Is
okay.
there-
I don't mind. I'll just, yeah, no, this is important, so I'll do it, and if they're not done, we've got a mentor Echo field trip tomorrow, so if I can't get them before I leave for that, it'll have to be on Thursday or
Yeah,
something else.
and if not, I can go down Thursday morning.
Okay,
So just let me know. And then maybe the easiest thing is to just have them in a central spot, so people can pick them up. And I'm happy for that to be on my porch. I'm on Basin Street, right in Bristol, or if there's another spot people can think of that's easy to grab them at.
so is 10 enough, or do you want me
I
to
would say 15.
15? Okay,
Yeah,
And what's your address, Krista?
it's 14 Basin Street. It's the blue house on the left with the peace flag. And I have a front porch with a bench on it, and I can put a little clear covered Tupperware that
Okay.
they'll be in, so they'll be protected if it rains, or so they won't blow away.
So maybe by Friday morning, that would be.
Yeah, let's say that.
Okay.
But I would also say that in addition, like Deb, if you're at the library, like, mentioning them to them, but also maybe even send them an email with the contents, because sometimes they have, newsletters or things that they'll push it out to, like the Bristol Rec Department. I saw the director and I said, oh, I just sent you a poster. And then she wound up including it in their list of upcoming events that went out to their huge listserv, which was great. So yeah, so that you can use the text from the email. And then if you're a social media person, you can throw it on social media. But for the emails and the social media, I would say do it at least another time as it gets closer to the event.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah,
it twice. I mean,
I had
Yeah.
that I was trying to go and look to see if maybe I could do some of the Facebook ones, but then anyway, technical difficulties
Yeah.
figuring it out. But I think with like I was starting with Bristol Core, but then I was like, I wasn't sure if somebody already had done it. It's a little, some people have their name already or checked off. So I didn't want to, oversend if somebody else had already done some of the Facebook town ones. But I think it looks like you'll have to send them an email and have them post it. You can't just post.
Onto their account, probably not. Yeah.
It's
I
a
was
little
just-
trickier.
Yeah, I was just going to send emails or phone calls and either talk with them or email them and then follow up with the poster. So
That's great. Yeah, and if you
Oh,
can
it's
just note it on that document, there's a little, you can just click on the checkbox and it'll say that you've done it. And if someone else does it, like I think I might have picked up one of Kim's, so I just checked it and put my name so that she knew.
So people, because it looked like there were names in front of all the Facebook ones, so I didn't want to overdo that. So is that true? I just want to make sure they're all covered. I can cover the Vermont racial justice one. I think that one was not me, that was the only one in the Turning Point, I think, I didn't have, or maybe somebody already signed up for the Turning Point. I don't know.
Do you
There
see
was a-
that? Yeah, I would just look at that. I don't,
It's not, so.
Jennifer, do you want to reach out to racial justice? Because I haven't done them yet.
Yeah, I could do that. And were you also signed up for the Turning Point ones, Kim? Because I can cover those if that's
No, it looks like Liz was.
is. Okay,
There
she's
is.
not here. Oh, she is here. But she's-
Liz, would you like to have Jennifer do that for you?
I think she's dropped
Sounds
out.
good.
Oh,
Nope,
she-
I'm here. I'm doing the minutes and
Okay.
bedtime. But I'm, yes, I would be happy to have you do that. Thank you very much. Um,
And what about any
I
of
haven't-
the Facebook pages or are people all set with that? And
I didn't see it was on the Moncton Facebook page this morning, maybe, or yesterday. And it's been in the New Haven Facebook page, and I'll put it in 2 more times. And it's also hopefully going in the New Haven Town newsletter that gets mailed to everybody in New Haven. So that'll be in everybody's mailbox by May 1st.
So how do you get it on the town one? Do you have to be a town resident or do you ask the town clerk to do it?
Well, our community Facebook, you mean Facebook?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm the administrator for the New Haven, one of the administrators, so so I just post, but you as a community member can also just post. You can just do it as a
Okay.
regular post and invite people in the community to do it. You don't have to ask somebody to, as a community member, to post on the page.
okay, gotcha.
Yep.
So right now, Liz, it looks like you've got Bristol, Starksboro, and Moncton.
I was gonna say, you can switch Liz from Starksboro and you can put me on Starksboro, of
Great, thank you.
awesome.
course.
Yeah, I went through after it seemed like everybody had signed up and I was like, well, I'll figure out everything that's left. So if anybody wants to grab any of them, you're welcome to it. I just think it
Okay.
would be neat in the second round when we kind of do the resend, if
Yeah.
we know about the childcare before we do that, so
Yeah,
that we can update that, because that'll be good for everyone to know.
yep. And I just talked to Patrick about it yesterday, so hopefully we should know that in a couple of days.
And I did reach out to 7 Days, and the writer was going to talk to her editor about possibly covering it as a story. It'll be in the
Great.
calendar, but I talked to her about maybe doing coming to the event and reporting out about communities undertaking these efforts and school districts doing this work. And so I'm hoping it's been covered before from 7 Days, but I'm hoping that maybe they'll see this as an opportunity to keep the conversation going. And
That would be great.
Yep.
Same with the Addison Independent. They're going to do a press release, but I was really hoping they would do a story. I'm gonna reach back out to Maren Howell again to see. Maybe a little closer to the event if she'll do a story.
And it should be in the calendar. Typically, if you send a press release in, which we did,
Yep.
They'll make sure it's in the calendar too, of the week of the event. So it should show up in that calendar.
Okay.
Is there a poster up at Mountain, used to be Martin's Hardware, but is there a poster up there?
No.
I'll get one there too, because there's a lot of people going in there for spring things right now.
Good idea.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I had a stack of posters and I went to Mount Abe and I said, oh, can we put some around here too? And they were like, we'll take 10. I said, okay, there go my posters. So I only had 2 left. So there's one at Kimball's and there's one at Mini Factory. And those are the only 2 places I got to in town. So The other thing I talked to Patrick Reen about was, so he's going to do a blast out twice, 2 or 3 times to all MAUSD families, and then a specific one to families of 5th and 6th graders. No, yeah. Well, we talked about like kids that would soon be at Mount Abe, rising 7th graders. So I think maybe he was going to do something with them. But anyway, there'll be a push through the district as well.
Do we have things up at Red Cedar?
They
Yes.
got an email, and I know that went to all of their families.
Yeah, I had an exchange with Jackie and she said she was going to send it out to all their families.
Yep.
Which it sounds like she did already.
Yes, yep.
Elisa, when you go to pick up the posters, would you pick up 2 for me? Because I'll be out of town on Friday. Thank you.
The North Branch School too is sent it home with all their kids.
So I wanted to just talk a minute about a little more about the thought exchange idea. If we're done talking about the marketing for a minute. Okay, so it's a great tool, and the best use of it is really being able to dig into the data that comes back in enough time to be able to use it at the event. And so we were thinking about, you know, when I was talking to Patrick about sending it out to students, we were thinking about when to do that. And we have April break coming up. And so we were thinking about doing it right after April break. But what I wanted to do, and if I could figure out how to do this and share it with you guys, I wanted to just show you what it looks like. And I think I can share my screen and give you an idea of what, so that we can brainstorm a question, what our question will be. 1 second, I'm trying to log in here. Okay. Because I think it'd be really useful to do this, but I want to make sure that you all kind of know how it works. So are we okay if I share my screen for a minute so I can show you the tool? All right. When I do that, it'll be hard for me to see everybody. So if you have a question or you want me to pause for a minute, just let me know. Can you all see my screen right now? Okay, so it's been a little while since we've used this tool. So I'm going to try to remember as I explain to you how it works. But essentially the way it works is that you ask folks a very broad open-ended question so that you don't get a yes or no answer. And you ask people to respond to the question and with their answer and then elaborate on it. And let me see if I can find an example so you can see what it looks like. Okay. Oops. Okay, so we did actually, our administration sent this out to the community when they were trying to get community input around how to spend all of the money that we received through the COVID relief funding, which was called ESSER funding. And the question they asked was, what are the most important academic, social, emotional, mental health, and physical health supports for schools to provide to serve all students? So pretty open-ended question. And I'll show you what it looks like when people go in. Sorry, I'm probably giving everybody a headache as I try to remember how to figure out where I want to go here. Okay. So for that question, there were 150 people who participated. And they shared 163 different thoughts. So when someone signs in, they answer the question by sharing a thought, but they're encouraged to share several different thoughts, not just one. And then they can see the thoughts of other participants and review those and give them a star rating on one scale of 1 to 5. So you can share your own thought, but you can also kind of say ditto to other people's thoughts as well. And what you get out of that are lists of thoughts in order of how high they were ranked. And so you see this list here of all the different ways that people responded to what kids need. You see a lot of this is similar to the things we're talking about right now, making students feel safe, addressing anxiety, critical thinking, all of these things. Anyway, so we can look through all of the different thoughts, and then you can take them and theme them into different categories and get a sense, after you cull through all of those 152 responses, of what the general themes were of the thoughts that came up the most often. And so you can share back with people in the community, a little more deeply than a Survey Monkey. This does a little more of the theming of the information for you. Here's how many people we heard from, and then here are the thoughts they shared in order of the top priority. You can also ask people in addition to that question, you can ask them some demographics. So you can ask them what their role in the school district is, and they could choose multiple responses. Are you a family member? Are you a teacher? Are you a student? They have some suggestions of the types of questions you could ask based on what you're trying to get at. And they do, and if I go, let's see here. This isn't where we go. Oh, sorry. I should have played with this before I tried to pull it up on the screen here. They have some examples of different kinds of questions you can ask that are in the range of getting a sense from community around what kids need to feel included, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel safe. Our question can be as simple as that. It can just be a very open-ended, what do you think kids need to feel like they belong in our school district? It could be more specific. What should our schools be doing to ensure all kids feel a sense of belonging in our school district? The most important thing is for us to figure out what kind of question will generate participation and a diversity of thoughts. And then our job will be to figure out how to take all of those and theme them so we can share that back out with people, both at the screening and then even in a follow-up to the board and to the community. So there's also moderation in place so that you can ensure that you can view comments that are flagged for being maybe personally identifiable or have harmful or offensive language. So we can have some control over, or a pretty good bit of control over the participation so that it isn't perpetuating negative thoughts, but it's getting folks to share in a safe and comfortable way. I'm going to stop sharing because I feel like I'm mumbling through this a little bit, but that's kind of a quick overview of how the thought exchange works. So as you think about open-ended questions that we might want to ask students and community members, do we want to take a minute to just brainstorm a couple of ideas that we would have that we think would be useful?
Well, one thing from the musical itself that, was taking the language of the, what do students need? Using the word, what are the needs? Something like that. What do kids really need in schools? And, then they could fill in the different things that they need.
Krista, it would help me to get clear who are we aiming the questions at, and how are we getting the question to them?
Yep. So we could have one type of question for students and a different one for community members, or we could have the same one. The Mount Abe principal is going to help us distribute it to Mount Abe students. And then we'll use our typical, ways that we get information out to ask community to complete the survey.
For students, I would be interested in asking, what do you wish adults knew about your lives? And also what you wish the school, or you think the school could do differently to make you feel safe or feel more comfortable, serve your needs.
And if I'm recalling correctly, the way it works is that there's one question, but you then ask them to expand on, so there you give a single answer, and then you're asked to then expand on that answer. So we would want to craft a question that maybe like to your question, Erin, maybe it's like a combo of those two questions.
I like those questions because I think it ties in to what the film attempts to do, but it also provides information for the adults in the community, especially if we share it out to the full community, what kids in our district what's on their mind.
Yeah.
And what are things that we can do? And I like that follow-up. What are things that we can do to make kids feel safer at school?
Like specific actions, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we can play around with it a little bit and see if we can't come up with a question that kind of captures some of these different ideas. And we still have a little bit of time before it's going to go out, but this is a good start. And if you think of other questions, let me know. Okay, so we have about a half an hour left, and I'm wondering if we could talk about the exit survey that we want to distribute at the event itself. And Jennifer and Elisa and Deb worked on that. And I think there's a link to it in the agenda. No, I sent it in an email. Is that right? Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna drop it in the chat so everybody has it. Okay, can everybody get into that and see? Does everybody see it?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About the questions? Let me go back to where I was. And it says students face daily challenges at school. Please check all boxes that represent challenges that you would like to see addressed. Is this addressed by the school? I'm just wondering who this is geared. Is this geared towards the administration? Is it geared toward teachers? Is it geared towards the community, or just everybody? And maybe it was intentionally, left a little general in terms of who would students like to see addressing these, or community members too, because we'll have a lot of community members in the audience. And, this is a great opportunity to get their feedback as well.
Well, when we wrote it, I'm pretty sure we were thinking about community members that were attending the screening in the evening.
Oh,
Parents.
not students.
Yeah.
But it could be applied to anybody because it is so open-ended. So if there's a need, then you figure out who is best qualified to address the need.
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be the case with a lot of what I imagine, if we're able to then start to get folks to come together in more ongoing conversations, that there will be things that are appropriate for the school board to tackle. There will be things that might be more appropriate for other groups to address. And so, yeah, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that it's probably not all going to live within the purview of the school, but it's important for the whole to know. What I was wondering is, would we want to have folks, maybe it doesn't feel good to do that, but would it be helpful for people to prioritize, or to say, like, what are the most important issues in your mind? Or did you guys talk about that at all? Did you talk about that at all? Trying not to say you guys.
We talked about it. I think that might be maybe too much to ask of people. We're thinking just get
Quick.
people like quick, like as many things as you want to think about here, and then we'll start to work with it. Get us as much information as we could get, I guess. I think that was.
Gotcha.
Mm.
If this is a way to reach the community and what they believe, I'd love to hear if people disagree with the film. I feel like that would give us a little bit more of a litmus test into what sort of the community members are thinking. And also to ask them what daily challenges they feel like the kids are facing at school, because parents may be able to weigh in on this, or grandparents or friends or whatever. Sort of like in the thought exchange, but this may reach different people who aren't reached by the thought exchange. So, what have you seen as a challenge at Mount Abe or in the elementary schools?
So in your survey that you came up with, it's phrased a little differently, where you're saying students are facing challenges. Here are a list of them. Check the ones that you would like to see addressed. And I think what you're saying, Erin, is what do you see as the challenges that students are facing?
Yeah, because there may be something that's not on the list, or there may be, I would love a place for specific examples, because there may be information that we don't have about an incident, just like the one on the Front Porch Forum, that has not come out. And so I feel like this is a way to get some information in specifics.
I think we did include other, but we could maybe put a few of those. I don't know if that would be helpful, or if that's not enough.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about in addition to what you have here, just like maybe a more open-ended question of like, is there some, is there specific, incidents or challenge that you've seen in the community that kids are facing?
Yeah.
Which is a little bit different question than what you want to see the school address too, because there's some things that people may think that it's not in the purview of the school to deal with, but they still are facing that issue. So
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, I wonder if you could say, like if you focus the second question on things that came out from the film, like you have your list of the, of the things that were mentioned in the film, what are ones that you would like to see addressed? And then another question could be, are there other challenges that you think are important or that you think our students are grappling with?
yeah, I think that'd be good. And also maybe a place to just say, or a specific example of one of these that you'd like to tell us about. Because I think having the specific stories is really helpful to be able to say, my kid was called this name on the playground, or, they don't feel comfortable speaking up because they had this incident. I feel like the more information we can have like that, the more we can sort of target our like the sort of education that we do end up doing. Or
Yeah, because as a community member, without anybody in the high school, and I don't have a student, I would probably check every single one of those boxes.
Mhm.
So is that helpful? I don't, I think it depends on what kind of information we want to get, who we want to get it from, and then what we want to do with that information. So,
I feel like this, we could go lots of different directions with this. I figure in my mind, and in the exit thing, this time we got about 5 minutes of a person's time, because they've been to the screening, they've got to get home, they're walking out the door, they're headed for their car. We just want to try to capture something in 5 minutes. So it would take a long time to write up a story down, even though it would be really interesting. I guess for me, I thought that the whole aim of this survey was to find out who might want to come back to a bigger discussion about one of these topics. So if we could maybe look toward the end of the questions for a moment, and then come back, that might help inform. I don't know, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Because is there anything else you would like our committee to know? We're trying to find out if they want to continue the conversations in the future. That's kind of the biggest question, I think, is could this was to inform the small groups we might want to hold later on.
Yep.
And maybe that one could be expanded to include Aaron's question of, like, for example, any challenges or examples that you've seen that you'd like to say a little more about.
My only concern is then we become the holder of that, and we need to know what we're going to do with that. And I don't think our role is to fix that.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little worried about setting somebody up for thinking that they're going to share a story that we're going to then
Do something with.
address for them. And I mean, we hope that those stories all are addressed, but
we could change that number 2 question to say, please check your something about in the following list of things, check your top 5 priorities or something like that instead.
Well,
of,
yeah, yep.
I was thinking of something like that too, because I agree, I would check all of them. And because I think they're all important. However, some people might not check all of them. Is it too complicated to say check any or all that you are interested in and circle the top 3? So then you'd have, is that too, it could be too complicated to say that. It sounds simple, but it could be complicated.
We might lose them in the translation of that. I don't know.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
I don't know what others think, but people are going to be tired at this point. I think we should remember that. And on to the next, whatever it is, you know.
Well, and listing all of those things, you know, I think it gives people the opportunity to just say, oh, my top 3 things. If I had to do this right now, and I have to, so I can go home, you know, they are going to identify with certain things. And that's probably the best way the best kind of response to get is just to say, circle the top 3 things that you think need to be addressed. And there'll be some things left out that aren't unimportant, but it would be really interesting. I don't know how many seats are in that auditorium, but I'd love to see 90% of them filled. So if we have 200 people there, you know, what we get back is the top 3 most important things. And if people are on the same page, or if it's really, really diverse, it could be really helpful information.
Can we give this to them when they come, so they're not doing it on the way out? And then get it from them on the way out, so while they're sitting and waiting for everybody to get settled and stuff, they have time to look at it and do it? Or do you want them to watch the film first and then do it?
I'm
I
not
wonder if we
sure.
could hand them out while we're transitioning to the question and answer. We could all take a stack of them and just pass them down with pens or pencils down the aisle. And when we go to the Q&A, whoever's introducing best could say, and we're passing out an exit card, we'd love for you to identify the top 3 things here in our district that you feel the most passionate about being addressed. Because it'll be helpful for us to understand, you know, where the work needs to be done and what issues are the most important for people in our community. And that's the feedback we are trying to get.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking is it's sort of like we want, maybe we're trying to get 2 types of information. We're trying to hear what's top of mind for folks in terms of how they see these challenges. And we want to know what topics people are most interested in actually digging into and being committed to talking more about. And it might not be the same, or maybe there are people who want to share. These are things they're really thinking about and grappling with. And they might not want to commit to being part of an ongoing conversation at that time. But both of those pieces of information are probably helpful. So I wonder if we could do something like, you know, the film addresses, or here are a list of challenges, you know, circle the ones that are most, you know, top 3 or top 5, whatever, that are most, that you're most thinking about or concerned about. And then you know, which conversations are you most interested in being would you be interested in continuing conversations about any of those topics in the future? Maybe you ask it. Yeah, go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
One thing that occurs to me is, I mean, people, I guess it kind of depends on what the objective of this survey is.
Yeah.
My interest would be primarily in finding out, you know, like, here's this movie that addresses all these issues that are important to youth right now. We want to protect the health of our kids. So this is a great way to sort of delve into how we're doing on that and what we need to do better, right? And so there are a lot of people in this community who are really committed to climate justice or environmental activism or whatever, and that may be their like pet project, which is great and really important, but they may be putting that onto this survey. They may come because not necessarily because they have a connection to the school or an insight into what's happening in the school, but because they care. And it may be really important for them to do climate activism in the school, but that's a different answer than my child feels this sense of depression and despondency because of the climate. And so I really wish that the school was going to be doing something. And I worry that this question will collapse those two issues in a way that is less useful. And so that's kind of why I was thinking about having a more open-ended question that people could share the things, but we could also tailor the question to try to address that. But I think that those are two different questions that people could be responding to two different questions in their answers, and we won't be able to pull those apart.
Yeah. Mhm.
And in terms of worrying about people wanting to follow up, I think that we could couch the language, just be like, what is it you would love the school board to know about what you've observed with the school or something, and then we can pass that through to the school board without any sort of expectation of, we're immediately going to do something about it.
Deb and Jennifer and Elisa, would you be willing to think a little bit more based on what this conversation, like maybe try for a second version of tweaking it and pass it around again? Or do you feel like you have enough of an idea?
I personally would need to understand why we're doing it. Because I thought I did understand, and now I don't know that I do understand.
Well, I think it's more like, do we want to just have people sort of check the boxes, or do we want them to take time to put something more personal? I think that's what I'm hearing is maybe, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I know which is the better way, I guess. I was thinking about trying to get people to share as many things. I do think the prioritizing is good. I do feel like a little worried about gathering too much personal, and then, like you said, Krista, not having this not being the body to be able to exactly follow through with that. But if we got like a few topics that become like, those are like where we could start. What's the next thing that we're gonna offer? If enough people are kind of gravitating towards one topic, it seems like that's good to go towards. But I also love the idea of getting the personal information. That's kind of personal, but I don't know. And that's I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We could rework it to be a more personal question, or we could include both. We could have the check it if you want to go a little deeper with the challenge and personal story. Great. We could have both. So we don't lose the people who don't want to take time to, or don't want to go personal. I don't know. This is a few thoughts off the top of my head, but I think
What is the intention?
yeah.
What's our intention? I'm not clear now what our intention is by doing this. I thought our intention was to try to see who might want to come and have a deeper, more personal conversation in a Zoom or in-person meeting, which was what we were talking about doing all along, right? That's what I thought the intention was, but it sounds like we want to gather a lot of information on personal stories that we don't intend on following up on. So I'm just confused.
I wonder if we couldn't do both. And by that, I mean, why couldn't we have a checklist and then at the end, Aaron, you worded something that I really liked when we were talking about what we were sending out to the kids. I think you said, what would you like us to know?
Mhm.
And maybe we could ask a question, what would you like us to know about what you think is important for your child or for the community, or however you want to word it? So you had a question like that, so people could expound more, but you also had the checklist because some people aren't going to want to think at that point and write something down. Or who knows, maybe they can't write, I don't know. But, you know, I think we'll probably get a lot of check marks. And anyway, just wondering if we can't, why can't we do both? If nobody fills in the question one, so what? You know, and people just do the check mark. Or if people don't check mark and they have a story to tell and they just do that part, you know, so what? We'll get information either way.
Yeah, that was kind of my idea, is just, you know, in addition to every great thing you have here, is just having one more question, which I think can inform what we do going forward. If we're going to have like, you know, if we do get people who check every box, but then we have a bunch of personal stories that all talk about racism, then that informs us that, you know, maybe one of the study groups should be about racism. I just feel like it's useful information that we can use in a lot of different ways. We can pass it through to the board, the school administrations can see it. We could be like springboard for the discussions that we're developing in the future. Like, it's just, I don't feel like we're necessarily making any promises by having a question, you know, generated by the film. I think it's a chance to hear from the community. You know, this committee is supposed to be a conduit for communication back and forth. And this is like a chance to get a little bit of information. And if they don't have time or interest, then they won't do anything. But I don't think it hurts to have a question that asks.
Is there a way you could reframe question 6 that would come around to what you'd like to have on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're saying, you know, is there, what would you like our community to know about the challenges our students are facing?
Liz, did you want to go ahead? I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just we'll convene perhaps, and I'll volunteer to participate in the survey reading and theming. Thought exchange is awesome for that. And I will say the open-ended, I mean, we've done surveys where there was just a scale and you just kind of circled the number. And some people will just turn the page over and fill out the whole back, and it'll be, you know, a short story, and that's great. And then some people, like students, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's a processing thing that we'll have to commit some time to for those questions, or kiddos might just write, "I like pizza. That's what I need you to know." So like it's you know, it'll just be something that will be kind of our next, when we think about our next project, that's a project in and of itself, processing the survey.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially for the exit interview for the event. Yes. And also before that, for the thought exchange. Yeah, the software does a lot, but it doesn't do it all. So thanks for offering to help with that, Liz.
Weren't
Thank you.
we going to read what you found out from the survey that the kids that you took in the high school? Weren't we going to read that to this audience?
What I was thinking is that we could pull themes from that, and so we'll do a survey in advance of the event, yes, for students and for the community, with enough time to pull some themes to share with the audience. But that's going to be like a quick overview because we probably won't have a lot of time. And that And the main goal would be to kind of ground people in the fact that, because I'm assuming a lot of the themes are going to be very similar to the themes in the movie, to be able to sort of ground people in the fact that this is from our local community, you know, saying very similar things. But that data, that information will be so helpful in a deeper level as well, for
Yeah,
this group to grapple with.
I totally agree. The reason I was asking that is it might be, I'm thinking about the timing again of when to get this out to the audience, and it might be more provocative to read what the students said first and then hand it out to the community members.
Mhm.
It might just make them have a different perspective or shake their brain open or whatever. That's just a thought.
Yep.
Maybe not. But I think the timing of when you give it out, I really don't want to hand it out as they're walking out the door or at the end, because I don't think you'll get much information. But
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it.
Well, I think, you know, it could work like Kim suggested when for the Q&A,
Yeah.
you know, right as that gets underway. Okay, well, we're at 8. And so I think we've covered a lot of ground. We will have, let's see, I think just one more meeting before the event. And so I'll probably be doing some communicating by email before then.
What is the next meeting? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure that out. I think, let's see. It is May 2nd. Yeah, we have a regular board meeting next Tuesday, and then we don't have anything for April break. But what I'll probably do is send, try to email this group that week to finalize some details. And if we could, we're thinking hard copies for the exit survey, right? So we'll have to make sure that's finalized and ready to be printed for the event. So I think if we can get that ready to go before break, that would be great.
So Jennifer has the original of this. And do you feel like you can just make
Yeah, I can edit those little, I was thinking I might just add to that last question, you know, any specific challenges or examples that you'd like to share with us so that it gives them that space. The only thing I didn't hear is whether we wanted to have the, do people disagree with the film? I also heard that. And I can do the you know, prioritize the top 3 to 5, something like that. I can reword that. But do we want to have a specific question that asks people to say more if they disagree with the film?
I
Deb,
can't hear you, Deb. Go ahead.
How about just, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Instead of asking for negative, asking for any more feedback.
Okay.
Maybe we could say in number 1, name one important thing you learned from or were surprised by from the film. Maybe that would, you know, the surprised by, I don't know how you actually can disagree with the students in the film, but you might be surprised or taken back by something that you.
Also, to Liz's point, I think if folks have, they'll find a way to share if there is a strong disagreement about something.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Also, Jennifer and I cannot come on the 2nd. We have Alvin Ailey tickets at the film.
Oh, awesome.
So
But we can be an email
Okay, great.
and if there's anything else to add, I can add it next. change it and resend it.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm gonna probably see if we can get it printed through the central office and like small card stock that's easy to, not easy to lose, but easy to hand out. I'll ask. But I know that will take a little bit of time. So as soon as you can
Yeah,
get it to me, and it might just take a little reformatting, that would be great.
okay.
One other quick suggestion, Jen, is I just wonder, I think the number one, maybe we should take out systemic and just put racism. Given recent events, and the fact that we have the accurate inclusive history at the bottom, so it might be better just to say racism or racial aggression or something like that.
I think not aggression, but what do we, I could go either way, I guess. How do people? Yes, take it out. Everybody put their hand up if take out systemic feels right.
I guess I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other.
Me neither.
I think it covers, I think. Yeah,
What do you think? It was just a thought.
okay.
Okay, so we'll have, the big push is really to get folks there. So if we can keep doing that, personal invites again, go a really long way. And I'll work on a question for the thought exchange, and yep, I'll send some follow-up emails.
One
Kim?
other quick thing that I have a question about is the Fine Arts Festival going to be open before? In other words, that
I don't know.
you don't know? Okay, because
don't know.
it'd be nice to invite people to come and see the artwork.
I know. So
Before,
that is
so-
a, I think on the 12th, which I guess is tomorrow, the woman who's coordinating it was going to be meeting with the art and music departments to see if they would be willing to do like a soft opening. So that people could peek in. Also the new lobby will be finally open, so it'll be lovely for people to come and see that and see the student artwork. And
Yep.
Yeah, so if that's the case, we could add that and then any info about the childcare to
If you hear
future.
about that, would you let us know, Krista?
Yes.
Just so as we're putting things on Facebook or reaching out.
Yeah.
to folks, we can invite them to enjoy the artwork.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All
thank
right.
you.
Well, thanks so much, folks. I appreciate you. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions or thoughts, and I will do the same.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Great. Have a
Thanks,
good
everyone.
night.
Bye.
Bye.